Okay, welcome back after the break. Uh, so I think the pre-break session, we are now kind of oriented with various ethical principles. And then in the previous lecture, Dr. Karina has given us a very broad spectrum in terms of like where do we stand so far as clinical research is concerned, and then HPSR research is concerned. What I'm going to do is now, I'm going to take you through a journey of my own research work and then relate it back to what we have discussed in today's morning session. And kind of ethical situations that I faced, I underwent, which we think, yes, these are the everyday ethical and practical challenges in the field, and which any researcher, any health policy and systems researcher being in the field would definitely undergo those kind of challenges and situations. So I stand before you this morning to just share my learnings and experiences with you, and I'm pretty sure like you all would benefit from it. Okay, so let's begin with this. So we all talk about field work, and yesterday, if you remember, like when Professor Karina gave her orientation on micro level of analysis, or when we look at the micro level in the HPSR, we don't say data collection, we talk about field work, okay? And it's not only technical, but field work is all about encompassing relationships. And that's why field work, when we say it, is at the heart of the discipline of anthropology. So anybody coming from anthropology can regard this. But irrespective of that, all of us who work in HPSR lean onto that side of, and we tend to call our work as field work. And it is field work what defines anthropology, constitutes its identity, and separates it from other related disciplines like sociology and other disciplines. The aim of the field work is to get inside the way each group of people see the world. So like from day one, like we are discussing about these issues in terms of we are there as researchers to understand the insider's perspective. It's about them rather than we being an expert, like we go with a student-oriented approach to learn something from them. When we talk about field work in our research, in the context of field work, one of the most crucial things that comes to the forefront is the relationship between the researcher and the community. So everything, our field works, our data gathering processes, while we are situating ourselves in the field, revolves around relationships. These are the relationships which any researcher needs to build on by establishing rapport. So rapport in itself is the relationship of mutual trust and cooperation. You create a healthy environment with your participants, your respondents, so that there is an open exchange of thoughts and processes. There is an open exchange dialogue. So it is an information given by the informants may be substantially affected by their relationship with the researcher and by their understanding of what the researcher is doing. So once you are able to establish a trust level between you and your respondent, there is going to be a healthy platform. There is going to be a platform where the exchange of ideas are going to be very meaningful and thoughtful. This was the research question that drive my PhD work, and you could see like there are two questions within one broader question, like how public-private mixed TB is managed and implemented within the government structures at district and sub-district level, more of a meso level question, but at the same time, how existing RNTCP frontline TB workers put this policy into practice, again taking it more to the micro level. So this is, though this came towards the end when I started understanding how this whole PPM-TB policy gets implemented at the field level. So there are different fields within the smaller fields. You could see like there's a whole public sector, there is an NGO sector, there is a field of private practitioner, there is a community and TB patients. And then starting from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare with WHO as an international body. So they all have, like different levels. At macro, meso, and the micro level, you could see the relationships are where the relationships were formed in terms of implementing these partnerships. So this was basically my whole work to understand what happens at this district level, below district and the sub-district level. How does this partnership, when we talk about public-private mix or public-private partnerships, how do they get implemented on a day-to-day basis at the micro level? And through this whole process of field work, like I came across 68 people like whom I interacted with, and they represented different field, different sectors, like coming from NGOs, program managers and policymaker side, private practitioners, DOTS provider, basically community volunteers, and frontline TB staff, like encompassing medical officers of the TB units, medical officer of designated microscopy centers, senior treatment supervisor, senior treatment laboratory supervisor, TBHVs, MPHS, and so on. So 68 people were my key people in my research work. When it comes to my field work, like it encompassed almost for 14 months, starting from October 2010 to December 2011. And it like relied on participant observations, informal interactions, and in-depth interviews. It encompassed making links with the people, engaging with them on a day-to-day basis, and becoming part of their lives. Such a long engagement of 14 months' time definitely brings a lot of ethical concerns and issues to the forefront. There are other learnings, other challenges that I faced in the field, but keeping, like our today's discussion in mind, I'll be just talking in terms about the key ethical insights and lessons that are learned. So today we will try to look into some of these 9 ethical insights, and I would bring in the examples from the field activity and how I tried to tackle some of these challenges. Now, the first and the most prime thing is that gaining trust without being dishonest. For the reason, because participants, your respondents, the community that you're going to engage with, they may be skeptical about your intentions. You might be coming from a particular department, you might be coming from a particular institute, you might be very honest, you might be very open in your research approach. But why would somebody trust you in the first instance? So I faced this problem, especially in the initial couple of months of my field work. Like, it was very difficult for me to gain people's trust. But the response was like, I had to build the trust. I had to clearly communicate research objectives without overpromising the outcomes, being transparent about affiliations and funding sources, engage in long-term consistent participation to demonstrate sincerity. So what and how did I go about it? Like what was the strategies I built to gain their trust? So my initial 3 months were completely devoted for rapport establishment. And my role was just to go and sit outside the designated microscopy center, just observing. What you did yesterday for 5 minutes, I had to do that for 3 months. Morning I used to go there, take a chair, sit outside, and just do the observations. And in the process of observation, people started feeling my presence. I who was invisible, now I started becoming visible to people. And slowly, it took a form of hanging around with the frontline staff. It meant like going out for a drink, having a cup of tea or coffee, eating local spicy snacks at the street stalls, having meals together, and at times watching movies at cinema theaters. Now, though these kind of smaller activities began in the initial stages of my fieldwork, but they continued to remain till the end of my fieldwork. And rather, it took more deeper meanings. But the process of rapport establishment is not only to make friends, but also keeping your own research objectives at the back of your mind, that you are there with a purpose. So rapport establishment also intended to identify the key people, the key actors who are more crucial from my study point of view. And this led me to move from one person to another using the snowball technique. Okay, so the inner circle, the blue ones, were the people with whom I was slightly familiar with because of my previous work done a couple of years back before my PhD. But then on a day-to-day basis, as my interactions with them, my relationship with them started shaping up, I started moving into the outer layer of the inner circle. And that's how, like my key people, my key respondents started becoming visible to me through those interactions. And I started approaching them with one reference to the other people. If you look above, there was one person like NGO A director. With his help, I was able to get into Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It's very difficult to get a permission to get into Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and to interview people. Okay. And once you get there, then one person leads you to another one, and another one led me to the third one, and I had 3 very key policy level interactions with those so-called key informants. Similarly, at the field level, private practitioners, why should private practitioners leave their busy schedule and give you interactions and interviews? So my field level staff from the program side, from the NGO side, they became my interlinked people. They became my key informants who could link up me with the people in the field. And that's how, like when we talk about rapport establishment, it is not only about making friends, but it is also keeping your wider research objective into your mind. So gaining trust. Why would this happen? Why would this take place? Why such a picture could be drawn at this moment of time? Because there was a trust inbuilt in the initial process. And that trust building took some form of time. The second ethical insight is about power dynamics and positionality. The researcher's background, which class, gender, nationality, institutional affiliation, identity and power dynamics shape interactions and access. Who you are in the field is going to influence how people are going to respond to you. The researcher may be perceived as an outsider or even a gatekeeper for resources. The response is like reflexivity through field diaries, acknowledging biases and negotiating relationships with humility. So being mindful about your own position. People who are working on gender sensitive issues, it makes a difference who goes for the interview, who interacts with people. If it is about a mother caring for the child, would that person be comfortable talking to a male researcher? So you might need to have a female researcher with you for a meaningful interactions. So your own position creates some kind of power dynamics in the field. But your positions never remain same. It shifts. So in my case, it shifted from being an outsider to an insider. So for the initial 3 months, my identity was, somebody has come from LSHTM. And this person who has come from LSHTM has come from my director's reference. So these people who are sitting at the frontline clinic or the designated microscopy center, they had no choice than to host me. Because I came through the director's reference. The director had given me the letter, no, you can operate from our field office. But slowly they realized that my interactions with the higher officials are very minimal. I'm completely at the field level. And so my identity starts becoming also as a burden slowly. Why is this person coming and sitting outside the designated microscopy center every day? My observations, the notebook in my hand, the pen that I'm writing the things are making them more and more suspicious about my intentions. But over the time of those couple of 3 months initial, the rapport establishment takes place. And then ultimately, the relation takes a form of a friendly relationships. And that's where, after my presence was accepted with complete trust, it was at that moment of time I started doing my formal interviews. Till then, I was just doing observations and informal interactions. Another ethical principle that comes to the forefront in such a fieldwork is informed consent in practice. Now, any of the research that we do in public health, we are bound by certain ethical principles that need to be followed, and one of them is like taking consent from our respondents. So we have our consent forms, we have our information sheet, and then we go, we explain people like this and this. That is fine, because you are having one time of an interaction. But a place where you are going to hang around with people for 14 months or at least for a year, will that one time consent be enough? So in long-term participant observations, people may even forget that they are being studied because they become friendly with you. They trust you so much that they are likely to forget that they have been observed, that they have been studied. And so it is difficult to ensure continued consent. Ethical comfort and awareness of the research is very much essential. For instance, on certain occasions, some people know that I spoke this last time, let's have a cup of tea. 75% of my data collection happened at such kind of tea stalls. Because every day there was this whole trend. You go to the office, somebody will come from the TV program side and say, sir, chalo na chai peene jate hai. So 2 rupees cup of tea filled with social relations, power dynamics, and loads of information that is important from your research question point of view. So initially I was excited, but suddenly the ethics in me started questioning, am I doing the ethically right thing? Because at the tea stall, they are telling me something which is in an otherwise situation they would have not told me. I'm registering everything in my mind. So what I do? I don't want to lose that information. That is the story that needs to go in my thesis. This should go in my report. So what do? So with this confusion, I wrote to my supervisor. I said, I am in this dilemma now. I have oriented them with my research objectives. I have taken their consent at the beginning of the study. But now this is an ongoing thing. Every day they come up with some interesting things. And I can't resist myself from documenting it. What do I do? And then he suggested me, the next time it happens, you stop them. So what I used to do? Over the tea, if they start telling me something more sensitive, I used to stop them. Would you mind? What you're saying is very crucial from my study point of view. This fits within my research objective. And if you would allow me, I will be happy to take a note of this and write it in my field diary and use it for my research. Should that be fine? And the response I used to get is, sir, please go ahead. We trust you. Now you are our friend. We are not afraid or scared about you. We know your intentions. And that's how the rapport built happened to a level where even the sensitive pieces of information were shared with me at ease. Another ethical challenge one would face is the reciprocity in maintaining the relationships. We as a researcher are there to take information from them, learn from their practices. But they also have some kind of expectations from you. They also start expecting in return some time from you. So a community might expect an advocacy, while the researcher's role is primarily academic. So frontline workers had many challenges. So they used to say, sir, tomorrow our boss is coming. Would you mind talking to him? Telling him that you should raise our salaries? You should lessen our burden? Okay. Now this is a great turmoil as an individual researcher, because your purpose is academic and you intervening might. And so certain times you need to clarify your goals early and while finding ethical ways to give back. So skill sharing, community reports. So there could be definitely instances where you can help them out. So how did I do that? What were the instances where I gave them back something what was within my limit or within the framework of my academic work? So in case this took many different forms, such as helping them prepare quarterly reports, drawing DMC maps for them to refer to, acting as a DOTS provider in the absence of staff. So I remember one instance, when one day the staff was on leave and I was sitting in the designated microscopy center. And this lady came who was on DOTS treatment. So earlier they used to have DOTS boxes. So TB medicines were put in the boxes. So each patient had one box. So the idea was the patient will come, the healthcare provider will pull one strip, give to the patient, and the patient will swallow the medicine in front of the health worker and then go home. Every alternate day, the patient will come. So this lady came in, she told me, sir, my name is so and so, that is my box. I said, okay. So I pulled the box, pulled one strip and gave it to her. So she looked at me. She said like, are you new here? Are you a new staff? I said, yes, what happened? I said like, that other sir is very nice. I said, why? Well, he gives me 3 strips in advance, so I will come only on next Monday now. Okay. So I said like, I can't do that. Because ideally you should come every alternate day. And then she started having a small argument with me. And then the poor lab technician who was listening to all this conversation, he looked at me and said, he just waved it. So she is a regular patient. She takes her medicines regularly. We trust her. Okay. So you please go ahead. And so it meant, like on certain times, working as a staff over there, counseling and guiding them for their career, lending money at times of need, playing with their kids when they visited designated microscopy center. Okay, sometimes on Saturdays or weekends they used to get their kids. So I became somebody's mama, somebody's uncle. Okay, so different relationships, okay, took form. Then contributing small amounts toward tea and snacks. Because you being a researcher, yes, you are coming from LSSTM, you have a very good fellowship, scholarship, you can pay for their tea and snacks, but sometimes you also need to just take a contributory role. Okay, let's do it jointly. Rather than I will pay for you, let's make it a joint effort. So Germain will say, good fieldwork relationships call for some kind of reciprocity on the part of the ethnographer. So this is very much within the frame of the fieldwork. Okay. Now you might say, sir, but our fieldworks are going to be smaller ones, not 14 months. Can we get 3 months to do a rapport? Our entire study deadline is 3 months, sir. Okay. But let me tell you that even the 1 day, 1 minute or 5 minutes are also essential enough to build a good rapport depending upon how you communicate with your respondents. Another ethical principle is about being present, your presence in the field as participant observer and observing the informal interactions as well. So participant observation is the cornerstone of anthropology. Observation means witnessing events participants may not occasionally share. And then sometimes you land up into ethical situation like how do you interpret those things? Sometimes you may feel certain practices are not ethical. And then you would land up into situations. So as a researcher, I also face these kinds of dilemmas. So participant observation involves holding the role of a participant and observer, insider and an outsider, in tension so as to ensure that one is close enough to see what is going on, but not so close as to miss the woods for the trees. So you need to maintain the boundaries, you need to draw the line, being a participant and observer. Sometimes it's challenging because you become too much friendly, then you're going to miss on the wider picture that is going on over there. For me, it helped me to get closer to the reality of the day-to-day operations of frontline staff and to explore the context of their action towards policy implementation. See, my research question was at the back of my mind. How PPM-TB policy is implemented at the district and the sub-district level. How frontline TB workers are putting policy into practice. Okay. Now, one instance, the program guideline then used to say that any person who is a suspect of TB has coughed for more than 3 weeks, he will come to the designated microscopy center and the lab technician should collect his sputum sample. That is sputum A. Okay. And then he should be given another container and asked that next morning he should come back with the early morning sample. Okay. The follow-up attempts were strict. If the first sample is negative, then it's okay. Now we know that the patient is negative. But if the first sample is positive enough, and if next day the person doesn't come, then it is a matter of worry. Because now we know there is a patient out in the community who is tested positive, and now that he has not come back to the labs for tests, that means he's spreading out the infection in the community. He needs to be catch hold of. The system needs to go behind him, bring him back onto the treatment. So these were the program guidelines. Now in this context, I am going to give you one excerpt to read and then to reflect on. Now this is Wednesday, 2nd of February 2011, sometime post lunch, okay? And this is the scenario that is happening in that lab. I want you to read this. Are you getting it? Are you able to understand it? Okay? Okay. What do you think about this now from the ethics point of view? Did you understand this? Okay. Anybody who hasn't understand it? Okay, I need your interpretations on this. Now you have learned to observe, you have also learned to interpret, so I need your interpretations on this. I also showed you the policy guidelines in the previous slides.
The program guideline says that they need to examine two sputums basically. One is at the spot sputum and the second one is at the morning sputum. Right. And it is the bounden duty of the lab technician to follow that guidelines. That is the basic ethics he should follow. Although that if it comes negative, that doesn't mean that he can do whatever he wants. But he is also telling that it's very difficult to get the other side. He may not getting that, morning sputum from the, suppose out of 13, maybe 3 people come and give, other people won't know. And also they don't know what is exactly morning sputum, when to take, how to take also. But on the other hand, the supervisor will come and check, like for the policy guidelines. So he is in like, it's a situation is making him to do all these things. Because he has to do follow the program guidelines. So for that he need to examine 2 slides of the single patient.
Right.
But when the patient is not coming for that to give that second sputum, and if some other higher ups comes, they will ask him like, you are not educating him, you are not doing the work properly. If you tell them or if you make them understand the importance of second sputum, then they'll come and do. Although most of the time he will do, but that won't work in most of the public sector.
Right.
So this is what making him to do all those things.
Right.
I feel.
Fine, but like from the guidelines point of view or ethics point of view, how would you interpret? You are right, whatever you discuss. But I need your interpretation on this. You have something to say?
On the outset, it does seem unethical. If you're talking about adherence to guidelines and what their job is and what actually he's doing on field. But as I said, at the outset, it feels unethical. But if we look at it from the person's shoes, an important part is that all the samples were negative. So I mean, he might have thought that as it is, like, they're negative. So even if I manipulate sample
Right.
B, so doesn't make a difference.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a dilemma actually.
Perfect. Good. So, but such instances in the field, it needs to be very cautiously handled with. Okay. You cannot go to his supervisor and immediately say, "Oh, look what he is doing. He's so unethical in his practices." Okay. Now, such instances, that's why in qualitative research, we would rarely rely on one particular method. Have you heard about triangulation of the data? Yes. We also need to look at different sources of data. Okay, what other pieces of data are saying. Now, after a few days, this happened at some point of time, after a couple of months, I formally interviewed this same person. And in that context, he said something like this: if one thing is wrong, then the STS, STLS, and MOTU and the entire team will be in trouble. If the conversion rate is not there, they will ask us. If target is not achieved, they will ask us. They mean the higher authorities. So we need to maintain a balance. Make a conversion. I am not getting anything for doing this. In one way, I am helping our team. Okay. Anything from yesterday's lecture? Can you relate it with this? We looked at the micro level, different theories, different kinds of concepts. What does this reflect? Some kind of an organizational culture that has been created over there, some kind of practices that have been implemented. Okay. So from a program or policy, it is the violation of the sputum testing guideline, one would say. However, from the lab technician's point of view, he is morally right. Through his own lens of right and wrong, this morning you see what models are. Okay, it is all about person. It's about how I decide what is right and wrong. Now this statement reflects a sense of responsibility, the pressure and a need for teamwork to achieve targets. Okay. So while interpreting observations, we also need to be cautious about in what context that particular behavior is being depicted. Why people are behaving the way they do? Because behavior is contextual. Okay? If I take you out of this room, your behavior will change because the context changes, the behavior changes, and that's why by interpreting behavior, we are contextual. Now, there was another instance, now not about observation, about informal interactions. Okay, in a formal setting, when you are interacting with people, people might tell you something at a very superficial level, or they might sometime, depending upon how you build your rapport with them. But sometimes you also get the actual scenario in the informal discussion. So it happened that one fine morning, I went to the TB unit, okay, where like all this staff, like state TB, senior treatment supervisor, lab supervisor, who are the key staff for that program, they were sitting in their TB unit. And I also went and joined them because they were all my friends now, and like I wanted to go with somebody to the field. And it was the time when one NGO who was also partnering as a part of this PPM TB policy wanted to do some sensitization activities in the field. Now I am sitting on the chair and look what's happening. While I was doing so, the medical officer entered in the room and the MOTO is asking, what happened to that awareness program for the cured TB patients? Why don't you call Mr. SNV, who is the NGO coordinator, to organize it? The lab technician immediately jumps and says, what do they organize? We have to do everything ultimately, leaving our work aside. Then the STLS contribute. Sir, it is waste of time. Just for the sake of photos, they do these programs. Then the MPHS steps in. They have enough funds, sir, so they keep doing their work. They won't listen to us. वो अपनी खुद की मनमानी करते हैं. They just do the way they want. They do things autocratically. Okay. Now this informal interaction also helped me understand that the picture that I was imagining about partnership, it is not that easy at this bottom level. On superficially they were saying we are implementing the partnership we are doing, but beneath the surface, beneath the carpet, these were the prevailing thought processes. This was how the NGOs were perceived. Okay. And you also need to be cautious in terms of when you listen to this kind of conversations, how you interpret them. Now, this enough of funds, the challenge was on every program, after the program the NGO was giving some snacks. So these frontline TB workers were telling them, why you waste money on snacks? We are in need of stationery. We need notebooks, we need pens, okay, we need some bags. Why don't you provide that? But the NGO is saying, no, it's our mandate because the funder has told us that after the program you have to distribute snacks. And they are saying that no. So there is this all misunderstandings that go. And it also create ethical challenges for you as a researcher, because you then get pulled away because you're also talking to the NGOs, you're also talking to the frontline workers. So you need to maintain your balance. But at the same time, you need to be cautious in terms of not to filter your lens or your mind with all the kinds of things that are happening in a different way. So being cautious, balancing your thing is more important. So this raises issues of workload distribution, fairness and role clarity. If health professionals are expected to prioritize tasks outside their primary duties, it can lead to burnout and compromised patient care, because they were burnt out. The health workers were burnt out already. They had so many things. And in the midst of that, again an NGO would come, do some program for half a day. That means they are going to completely divert from their day-to-day activities or so on. Furthermore, navigating relationships and boundaries. Now, building trust while maintaining professional boundaries is very, very essential. Being invited to personal events, where does participant observation end and personal involvement begin? So it used to happen, somebody's daughter's birthday, so they used to invite me. Okay, so you put on a different garment, now you are not a participant observer. So how do you maintain that? Okay, so that is also creates an ethical challenge. So establishing clear and culturally sensitive boundaries, ensuring relationship don't bias data. Now one instance what I did was, like, the time when I started becoming their friend, they started looking for a room for me. They said, like, no sir, you travel so far, we are looking for a room, you can stay nearby somewhere, this office, so every day we can go out, we can have fun in the evening hours, we can eat at this outlet, we can go for a movie. Okay, now that is fine. They wanted to be friendly with me, they wanted to utilize my time. Okay, they wanted to hang around. But I am not just a friend over there, I am also a researcher. So as a social being, I wanted to be with them as much I could, but the researcher in me wanted to be able to focus on my work at the same time. This I continued to stay at the YMCA hostel, which was around 15 kilometers away from the study site. So this distance from my participants during the evenings gave me adequate space and time to elaborate on my field notes, reflect on field stories and observation made, and transcribe recorded interviews on particular days. So every day, trust me, every day it took minimum 3 hours of my time to expand my field notes and computerize them. Every day. Especially for PhD students who are sitting here, okay, you would be looking into some kind of these deeper explorations. So your field diaries bring a lot of rich information, which interviews and informal conversations may not bring in. Sorry, interviews may not bring in, informal conversations would bring in. Coming to last couple of slides, handling over-reliance on certain participants. Now there is also this ethical pressure that comes in the field, because sometimes some people become too attached to you. They become over-friendly with you. Okay. So in my field also there were 1 or 2 people who were over-friendly with me. They were also my key informants. They opened up a lot of windows for me to see through how the program is functioning. but then they also wanted to control me. Sir, usse baat nahi karna hai. Don't interview him, he doesn't know anything about the program. Why you want to talk to our office? He has just joined, he doesn't know anything. I will tell you everything, whatever you want. Okay. Now they are very friendly. They know that we are dependent on them. But at the same time, they are likely to divert you. It might not be intentional. But you have to be cautious in terms of politely navigating the power dynamics. So they might have internal conflicts. So you shouldn't get trapped into those internal conflicts and keep your researcher's role with a boundary kind of a thing. So I usually spent more hours with this particular one person who was, like kind of very notorious, okay. So I used to purposely make attempts to go with him for dinner, so that next day morning he would not affect my work. So I said, like, okay, today we have gone, so we'll meet only on Friday evening now, okay. So tomorrow I'm going to that TB unit, I'm going to talk to that medical officer. Sir, shall I call him and tell him you are coming? No, I'll go and I'll manage. If I need anything, I'll call you. Okay, so you will have to politely manage your relationship and see to it that not only one person's voice is being heard. Okay, you need everybody's perspectives. Another very crucial thing is leaving the field and ethical exists. You shouldn't end your fieldwork, your research abruptly. People shouldn't feel that they have been used by you as a researcher. Okay, they shouldn't feel abandoned. I remember the last day when I finished my research, okay, and they all, in the sense of all frontline workers, some of the who had become very good friends, they came to drop me at the train station, and they were full with tears, okay. They were full with tears. They didn't wanted me to leave, okay, even I didn't wanted to leave them. But you are also a researcher, okay, and that's why, like, providing closure, sharing findings in accessible way, and maintaining long-term connections wherever possible is important. So my fieldwork completed in 2011. I finished my thesis in 2014, but when I came back for visit, when I submitted my thesis, I came back to India. So January 2013, I made an attempt to go and meet them. Okay. Then again, another one got married, so they invited me. So May 2015, I went and attended that marriage. So I spent 1 week there. Then there was a long gap, but we were in touch with each other. So last year, January 2024, I made my recent visit. And that same friendship, the same warmth I got from them. Okay. Those same faces, same places. Okay. I visited all those designated microscopy centers, learned, and they were telling me, sir, that time when you came, this was not there. Now it is there. These practices were not happening. This is, so they have telling me about the case. So they also remember my study now. Okay. So maintaining those long-term relationships. Okay. That demonstrates that we are not using people. We are human beings at the end of the day. It's about relationships, the relations we build with them. And finally, managing sensitive information and anonymity. Not only during the research process, but even after the research process. Okay. So being confidential about whether you should use people's names or not. Okay. So sometimes it is wise to use pseudonyms and remove identifying details. Careful data storage and balancing confidentiality with legal, moral, and responsibilities. So a couple of my papers have been referred in one review article which I recently saw, and all my 3 PhD papers are used in that paper as a review. Okay. But in that paper also they are not able to give my study site, because, and whatever they have given, it's the wrong site. Okay. So nobody knows actually where I did my data collection. Okay. So I have kept it confidential till this date. Okay. So maintaining that anonymity. Okay. So not only in field, but whatever publications that you do. Okay. Your thesis. Okay. Anybody tomorrow reads it, your participants should be presented with dignity. Okay. They are not like objects of the study. They are individual. They are human beings. Their stories need to be handled with care and dignity. So that is how, you need to be cautious. And these are the 3 interesting papers from my thesis. If you are interested, you could try reading them, especially this group who is working on I purposely withheld showing the papers because I didn't wanted you to get influence. And finally, to conclude, relationship between researcher and people are complex, but ethically crucial for meaningful engagement and knowledge production. Ethical fieldwork requires trust building, respect and reciprocity, ensuring that relationships are mutually beneficial rather than extractive. We are not there to extract information. They need to get benefit out of it. And how do we would give them back the benefits as a researcher? By taking their voices to the higher level, by taking their voices to the macro level and feed it back into the policy. Researchers have an ethical duty to be an active listener. That is the first important skill that we all need to inculcate. Keen observers and clear communicators to ensure accurate representation and minimize harm or misinterpretation. Ethical research extends beyond data collection, maintaining relationships post fieldwork, upholds integrity and avoids exploitative interactions. The absence of sustained engagement raises ethical concerns about the legitimacy and impact of the research, potentially making it exploitative rather than participatory. And finally, researchers have a moral obligation to faithfully represent people's voices and perspectives in policymaking spaces, ensuring that the knowledge produced serves the communities involved. So I have almost presented my findings in various forums nationally and internationally with policymakers, program managers, other researchers. So wherever I have got the opportunity, the key findings of my study are presented all across. Okay. So the last time when I saw this wonderful paper that has reviewed all articles on PPM-TB, I was happy to see that my 3 papers are being listed in that review. And I think as a researcher, I have contributed to that knowledge base. I have taken the voices of my respondents to that level. And that's how our research needs to be ethical enough. This is an ethnographic engagement, a long engagement, but we can be ethical and we need to follow this ethical principle even in the shortest of the shortest fieldwork. Just to give you one small example, how would you make people feel valued? Okay, many times we are driven by tight deadlines, especially when we work in the space of health systems. We suddenly go one fine morning and ask ASHA workers or frontline workers that we want to have interactions with you. But the personal experience I'm sharing, any kind of fieldwork that I am engaged these days, I make an attempt. The first day whenever I go to the center, I never interview anyone. I never interview anyone. I always go, I just introduce myself, where I am coming. I get introduced to the other people and I tell them that, yes, I know today you are busy, you are working. Would you mind we come back to you tomorrow? Okay? It allows them some time to think through. And we have seen, based on my personal experience, we have seen that the next day when we go, they value us because they feel that they are valued. This person, this research team is coming back for me. They want to interact with me. They want to know my experience. So what you are given? You have given them a dignified treatment. You have proven them. You have told them that you are valued enough in my research. Even if you tell me that you want to interview me day after tomorrow based on your availability, I should be fine enough. Okay. That's why like smaller things and the key informant interviews, we have understood, like different levels of interactions, the different principles while interviewing, okay, to build that rapport. Rapport establishment here took me 3 months time, okay. But every interview which is unique, your first 5 minutes are very crucial in trust building, okay. Sometimes we have also seen that during the process of interview, in the first 15 minutes, people are very reserved in talking. But over the time, listen this carefully, over the time, they become so friendly in that course of 45 minutes or 1 hour that from the 20th minutes onward, they might start talking something very sensitive, even forgetting that the recorder is on. how would you deal with this situation? What would you do? Imagine that you're sitting with a program manager. The interview started on a very happy note, a very welcoming note. You thought the objectives are very clearly known to them. You have already taken your consent, the recorder is on, the interview is going on. And after 15-20 minutes time, the person has gone into the deeper stories, sensitive stories, which he would have otherwise never told you. You cannot stop him there now because he is in the flow. The recorder is on. And you have come to the end of the interview now. What would you do as a researcher? How would you handle that situation? It is always a good practice that you re-remind people towards the end of the interview when you turn off your recorder. You make an attempt to tell them what they have told you. You remind them, dear ma'am, sir, this was one of the best interviews. Like, I came with certain level of expectation. I had certain set of questions, but the insights that you have provided are more deeper in its nature. You have unpacked so many things for us, which are sensitive enough. But I want to assure you again. I want to reassure you. I want to again tell you that we have recorded this, but this will be completely for the research purpose. Only me and my team, 3 of us, are going to have access to these files. And wherever we are going to use this information, we will anonymize it. We'll use pseudonyms. So your name, your identity will know. So you give them that assurance. Because we have seen sometimes, towards the end of the interview, people feel that they have unnecessarily spoken. So we shouldn't leave them confused, guilty, okay, or worried enough. So all the best with this all ethical principles in mind. And PhD students, even people who are working in different projects, keep these ethical principles at the back of your mind. We are not there just as extraction process of the data, but we are there to build relationships. So thank you so much for being patient enough, and we will stop here. Yes, thank you.